slope on the rear of the property.
To the east, yeah.
So what he's talking is the slope up to the subdivision on the east side of that. There's some comments on that, but our engineer did not realize that it was essentially existing. It's been like that since they had abandoned the red dirt mine, so it's basically all stabilized and been there all compacted. That's the clarification on it.
Yeah, I know last time we discussed traffic control at the cul-de-sac and then the two drives that we're constructing onto that. We also talked about that in the meeting last week, and I think the best route that we determined is to leave the cul-de-sac as is, but then put stop signs and stop bars at the drives, and I think we kind of realigned one of them a little bit better to make it more clear, so I think that got resolved as far as a solution everyone was comfortable with for that.
So the cul-de-sac will remain as it is with that kind of unique Y thing?
Yeah, I mean, it would function just like as if it was a residential cul-de-sac with drives off of it, but we'll put stop signs, stop bars on all three legs of that. So the public side coming in from the west, and then both of the commercial driveways will have stop signs and bars. So it'll be a three-way stop, basically.
Okay.
I think. There's anything else we discussed last time.
Well, in this meeting, there was discussion about taking that out and turning it into just like a freeway type of stop, and we didn't talk about that in the meeting last week. But with the existing infrastructure everywhere, everything that's built around that cul-de-sac didn't feel that it was the best route, for that, that and the adjacent property to the south still even have access off of it, things like that.
So what do we end up with some elevations, right? We were looking for.
Yeah, the architect is still working on that. We don't have those in yet, but we'll have all that cleaned up for the actual planning commission to be resubmitted. So.
And I believe the owner was probably going to ask for some waivers on the elevations as far as to be more in line with what is there as opposed to what the new development standards are for the subdivision. It seems how these are tucked back behind all of those. They would like to adhere to them, of course, along with on Main Street, but the idea is to ask for some sort of waiver to lessen the amount of the hard surface materials that are required. So, again, I haven't seen it yet. So,
Well, so what's the hardship that's created?
Yeah, the two reasons for that is one, trying to stay congruent with the existing buildings because they're the same architecturally. The buildings that we're proposing are the same as what Phase 1 and Phase 2 have. So you have two different facades right next to each other in the same development. So one reason would be staying congruent with the architectural design that's already there, and then the second would be, that's geared, from my understanding, primarily towards visibility from the highway. And these are tucked way back behind that. And there's not going to be any expansion further east. And so there's kind of a thought process that there was more of a justification for keeping all of the buildings in that development similar to each other, and especially since they're not visible from the highway as much, it's all visible from within its own development. There would be some justification for a variance on the architectural requirements for the facade.
I feel like building 8 and 9 are very visible from the highway, and one thing that I didn't like is that they don't have any landscaping on the backside, and I know that grades down for the pond, but when you drive down 112 and you look at it, and you can envision where those buildings will be, it's just a straight shot because there's nothing really between them and 112. It's just the pond, and there never will be anything there because of the pond. So just personally, I feel like there should be something there.
Like as far as the landscape,
just like a few trees or something, just to break it up. Otherwise, it's just grass and buildings. Right.
I know that's I think it's the 3-to-1 slope off the corners of that building down to the floodplain, so we can't get down below that elevation with grading. It's already been, the loamer's already been approved for that. But that doesn't mean that there couldn't be some landscaping that could install there. I'll have to get with landscape and see what they can do on that slope, because you don't want to put something that's going to wash out right there. But I can certainly see if we can try to create a little level area and at least get some screening, maybe on that northwest corner of the building to the northwest. I would kind of screen that a little bit more to kind of break it up, like you're saying. It's not just
And like,
giant slope in the
like,
building.
I feel like it has to necessarily be green as long as there was like something.
Something of
more
interest
than
there.
Just grass and then building. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll get with landscape and see if we can
Just something
address
to
that
break
over
it
there.
up and look more
Right.
aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah, sure.
I completely agree. I mean, those are the kind of, aside from the ones, the two buildings that are kind of on grading lane, the other ones that would be most visible would be the ones that you're talking about to the
8 and
to
9
the north.
next to the pond.
And, you know, in the theme of, you know, waiving some of the building requirements, having some additional screening, you know, for those buildings, or, you know, actually having some of the architectural requirements on those that are most visible,
Yeah,
you know, 1 and 2 would be, I think, a good middle one.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'll see if I can get that revised on our next middle. So we'll be on the same page with that.
What else do we want to come back and cover? Obviously, there's a few things that need to be submitted.
That was kind of it for me, was just those two. Everything else is very much behind where you can't
It's
see as well.
invisible, yeah.
One of the things we did discuss in one of the previous meetings, was, you know, the dumpster availability and stuff like that with the 4 sites. And the sites that are there and the ones that are proposed are all actually big enough to have 2 dumpsters in each. So they're oversized, essentially, it's kind of the idea. So I don't foresee any issues there. So there's potential for, you know, 8 dumpsters on site, not 4.
Does the dumpsters have closure?
That's, yes, that's what we're talking about. Sorry, it's, you know, the enclosures are big enough to have 2.
Got to.
Yeah. So they do have the screen enclosures, and then they're also big enough for the actual 2 per location.
I don't see it, we were talking about last time, this was on the landscape, in between some of the buildings, there was plantings there, there was also drainage, and that would,
Yeah,
doesn't
between
work and.
building 7 and phase 2. Yeah, I think Fallon mentioned that. Yeah, I don't think there was any issue with relocating. It's like a huge row of arborvitae, I think, that were pretty young, so I think we can relocate those elsewhere. I don't know if the most recent plans reflect that.
I don't see it, but I may be overlooking it.
No, most recent, yeah, the most recent ones still do have that shown there. I think we either discussed relocating that or we adjusted the swale to make it more conducive to those staying. But I'll see if we can relocate that and still meet the code.
I don't know if you heard, it was kind of a conversation with some of that, like the swell, you were talking about swell, we're talking over here. Seen it done where you've got narrow areas there, you're trying to create the drainage, but you put in basically a culvert that goes under, and then you can have a berm that goes over it. So you're creating the plantings above, but still allowing drainage underneath.
Yeah,
Kind of in that condensed area that you're trying to put screening and drainage together, so you're kind of creating that underground ductwork, if you will.
yeah, I mean, we can pipe it the whole way. The concern is that the proposed buildings are much higher in elevation than the existing ones because there's so much filler there still.
Right.
And so we've got to get that slope up, but then we still have to capture the water that runs
Right.
down the slope towards the old building. And so trying to squeeze in the swale and the grade change in there was an issue. Because we do pipe the stormwater through that gap between those buildings, but we still have to have a swale above it to get just that little amount of water out. And I think just because of how tight it is, there was an issue trying to get that to all work with the landscaping there too. So I think probably the best route is for us to just relocate those trees, because they've also got to get the force main for the sewer in that area too.
Same area.
Yeah, so.
I like the idea of relocating them because then you spread them out amongst other places instead of between two
Two
buildings.
buildings.
Yeah. And you get to have more around everywhere.
Yeah.
That are actually visible.
Yeah, and I think they're young enough they can just dig them up because the root ball shouldn't be very big as well. So.
What else, commissioners? Dave, you have anything?
Nothing really at this point.
When are you all getting back together?
I mean, I think there's still some things for them to resubmit, and once that's done, you know, we re-review and working out that one.
Yeah, we submitted all the plans addressing the engineering comments. The outstanding items would be what we just discussed with the landscape plan and the architectural. And then, let's see, the hydraulic analysis for the sewer got sent in with these plans as well. And then the waiver request. Is it a waiver or variance that we need to request? Okay. And that form is on the website. Is that the correct one?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
They were working on this, so, yeah, I think we got some in that.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So the waiver was for which?
That would be for the architectural requirements for buildings.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So then, next item of business, let's talk about this potential rezoning, 2026-02 Forward Meadows. This was property located along 854 Lane with several different parcels, 510, 45, 330, 340, 345, and 348. So, of those four parcels, roughly 77 acres. Some of these parcels have been rezoned already to R3 zoning. So we're looking at a fourth parcel, correct? It's agriculture that's being converted to, is being requested to go R3, and then it would basically lump them all together as R3. Is that right?
Yes, sir. So there's 3 existing parcels over here that are south of this Hillcrest subdivision at the end of this access point.
Right.
Those were rezoned to R1 a few years ago, and then last year it was rezoned to R2, and then recently, I believe it's been, the property has changed hands, along with this piece right here, and they're requesting for all of it to be rezoned to R3. As far as layout and everything goes, I think it's probably going to work out a little better on the city's side. You know, there was some issues with this access strip, you know, getting back here to these properties. this existing home was 6 feet off the property line. Some different things that, we had worked, that would, the original applicant for back here was trying to work through as far as getting access to it. And a preliminary kind of layout idea that they've given, it seems like it would work a lot better where they could have a couple accesses here, streets going straight back. They would still be able to get the access to Hillcrest here, potentially have a future access to Hillcrest there, and then even have an access down to this intersection of Brown. And so, as far as the layout goes, I think hopefully, depending on, obviously we've not done, there's not been an engineer yet on this, but from purely a rezoning standpoint, about the layout of the area as well.
So our future land use map calls for residential medium density, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, 6 units per acre.
I think it's up to 6. Yes, sir.
Now, if I recall correctly, back in some of the notes, if you look on that parcel that it's kind of a horseshoe shape because it's missing those other parcels in there. There was, when that first started, there was topography issues that actually mitigated really the impact, the density in that area couldn't be. The topography wasn't there was issues there that led to density. Am I wrong?
There's a creek somewhere.
So the topography of this is interesting, challenging. It kind of drops off.
That's what
It drops off in this direction back here. Originally when they were doing the R1, I think there was hope on their part that there would be septic systems. And then, they're in the karst area with the number of lots they were eating and everything. They went away from that. They were looking at putting a lift station back in this area and pumping, back up to Hillcrest. I don't believe, that part of it will change as far as, there's still going to be lift stations. I think this is the low point. There's probably going to still be something back in there, probably multiple ponds, on this side, almost 80 acres, 70 acres of land that will be required. But as far as the topographical layout, whether or not, or how many of it will impact, subdivision layout, it's hard to tell, without full engineering.
Is the creek that runs through that, is it further east of that subdivision?
I think what you're talking about is like over here.
Is it?
I believe so. Yeah, so you can see, the contours, it all kind of falls back to this area.
So is it Townwood and Avenue could also potentially connect in that? Is that splitting that property boundary?
It is. That probably was not the best location for a future step out, right on the property line potentially, as far as, on this side, but it, yeah, part of it is. think as far as zoning goes, it's meeting the intent of the residential medium density. It's, in line with the existing subdivisions that have been developed in the area and on that, especially on that eastern boundary line of the city.
Yeah.
And do you think most of the traffic is gonna dump out on 264? Or do you think it'll go down to Wagon?
Wagon Wheel, I would have to say 264. There might be a few people that learn about, Brown to Ziegler, to get over to Wagon Wheel. And I mean, I can see that definitely being the back way in that people start using. It might even potentially be where people get off at this, come in and then go to Wagon Wheel this way and go up, as opposed to, going all the way through Lowell 264.
In terms of the zoning, it's that is the most dense that I believe we could go, in my opinion. The traffic along, it's common, this is the common denominator here we keep discussing on this corner, this sector of the city is the density there, and how Ford and Brown can accommodate it. That's the real thing there, is how to accommodate that traffic flow.
Yes. I think we can safely assume that Ford will be the primary means of ingress and egress to get to this. And 264.
Which turns into further discussions on how we're going to facilitate that.
Yeah, especially in conjunction with
Because this is going to only impact, go back, zoom back in.
Where you want to zoom into?
To Ford Lane, where that property, subject property, down a little further south. So, what is there? 400 feet-ish, I'm guessing. I don't know if that's accurate.
From here, Brown?
No, of their property boundary, of this subject property that would be improved.
Along
That
Ford?
Yeah, along Ford, but then you're necked back down because of that other parcel. There it's unsold, and then to the corner, to the corner. So, just that history of Brown and Ford, which was just a dirt road not too many years ago.
Yes.
And there's no right-of-way there that I'm aware of. It's paved right up to the fence line. Yes. It's getting that, we're only, this subdivision, potential subdivision, would only correct a component of it. It doesn't fix the whole thing. So as a city, we've got to look further, how do we fix that? And I think it's going to turn into, I really don't know how this can go along with letting future development dictate it, because because there's too many parcels along there.
I would agree. There's too many smaller acreage parcels, and by smaller acreage, I'm talking 3 and less, that are not necessarily going to redevelop into something major enough that at some point all the Ford is going to be widened adequately, through development.
I don't think we can kick that can down the road.
I don't think we can kick it down the road. It's something that has to be addressed. This is going to push that envelope. It's gonna force this commission, it's gonna force the council, the city as a whole, to how is this gonna be addressed, in my opinion.
I agree.
That's my only rub really with the rezone, is how do we facilitate that? So,
A capital improvement project.
yeah.
Magnitude.
Yeah.
But we know, part of this will be improved.
I mean,
But again, this is, one of the last larger parcels, essentially, that we've been talking about. The rest are these, smaller, outlines that won't necessarily be developed. And then, again, looking from, where this attaches south to Brown, the chances of that being improved with any developments are very slim. Yes.
I mean, what's the reality? An R3 at 6 homes per acre maximum density. And
Well, no. R3 is not. Residential medium density is.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. But R3 is.
0.22, I think.
0.2, so it's 4.
Yes, R3.
So like I'm just doing what I was doing is like, because you're gonna get about 80% density. So, but even if you took your rates,
Roughly 7%.
yeah, so
Looking at
250
homes.
250 homes would be the impact. Round numbers.
500 cars.
Mhm. And add that to Hillcrest. That's a lot on.
And the other, yeah, so, I mean, it's how do we carry that?
Yeah.
That's the real,
Yeah, I don't think we can ignore that on the front end.
when they were talking R1 or R2 on that other parcel, and what was kind of the exhibits of what the impacts would be. I think we all kind of said, okay, it's manageable because there's not that many homes that can go on that back side, and there may still not be that many homes that can go on that furthest east because of topography and things of that
Once
nature.
you're into engineering.
Right.
We do have a right turn lane we would have to share the cost of if they wanted to pitch in.
What do you all think?
That's the biggest concern that we have.
I agree.
I have no pay for that, but
What?
we can't expect all those individual parcels to cough up anything. We don't have a record down there, we do.
I don't believe we do.
I think there's pretty limited right.
It was because that was all just dirt road, not too many years ago, within the last 10 years.
Yeah, you can see right here, actually along this, at some point in time, I'm assuming a split or something happened, and they had actually already dedicated this right of way along forward where this parcel is. But, the rest of these, it's fairly center line. If you're looking at this line, your center line of the road.
I would like to entertain more conversation with council on this situation. Obviously, any type of rezoning is going to come to them as a recommendation from this commission, but it's more in depth. And I know we've had concerns in the past, and this is pushing that conversation forward fast.
Yeah.
The problem is, if it becomes a problem, there's not a good fix.
That's what, if you get too far ahead, then it's,
No, I think we need to be more
Well, I mean,
proactive.
this is something where talking about essentially this, 4 lanes encompassing a full section.
yes, and then you have the existing subdivision of Brentwood that doesn't, it necks down too, because that was developed 20 years ago.
But, with this being developed, and this, at some point, with both of these, typically we'll have a traffic study done. But I don't know, if the rezoning is the time to start looking at that as far as, just land compatibility.
Compatibility wise, that's probably fair to say, but it's that what's coming next.
Right. Yeah.
Because even if the traffic study's done, what do you do once you're right there?
Well, you just read it and weep. Yeah.
So what do we do?
I mean, from a purely rezoning standpoint, based on, you know, how we decide these things with future land use and everything else, I mean, it meets all those requirements, criteria. Process-wise and timeline-wise, as far as, you know, what we do, there's a lot of things at play right there, like you're saying, with this, with the other one across the street. You know, we've already talked about, you know, potential need for, you know, a signal intersection or, you know, three-way, you know, with a turning lane.
Well, I agree that R3 fits into the residential medium, but I think we need to just look at that when we think about a rezone. And I know the rezone doesn't do anything except say it would allow this, but if we're gonna allow R3 and that many homes, I just don't think we can ignore that as a city, we have a responsibility to be able to accommodate all the traffic.
And we know everything around that section of Ford is residential medium density. Okay, so we've already established that. We've adopted that as a city. So we've got to address the street. That's got to be, how are we going to address the traffic flow? Has to be moved forward on the timeline, especially with what's being, the ask is correct. The ask by these owners is not out of the realm. So it fits. So
it's like a cart for a horse.
yeah, but so it's how we've got to address it. How are we going to resolve it as a city? We've already established what the street type is. We already know what the cross sections are. So all of that technically has been established. It's how are we going to address it? And it really puts the due diligence on the council on how that's going to be addressed. Yes.
I mean, if we have to.
So that we've got to move forward from a council standpoint to address how we're going to get those road improvements accomplished. Not in a piecemeal.
Through funding.
Through funding. Because the piecemeal is going to create a big hindrance for the community as a whole.
Well, we've got the full street section up to this point with the church and Brickwood. Maybe wrong with that. The church does have full street section through some parts of it.
Parts of it do.
Yeah, okay. I may be off. I'll say it comes all the way there and not stop after the building.
But it's broken. It's broken where the Chef's Trucking and Landscape is at.
Yes. It's broken here. It's 5 acres right
Yeah.
here. You know where that is.
Yeah.
And that was challenging from an engineering standpoint whenever we were trying to do like the drainage and stuff like that. And that's where we did some actual offsite improvements as far as culverts under Ford lane, things like that, that were inadequate, not sloped the right direction, things like that. And then essentially, you know, after Hillcrest, that whole western side of the road.
It's
On
down.
the western side, there's about 5 new homes that's developed in the last probably 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just completely old farm.
No, it's not change. There's no change of use of the land. So new structures, new homes has been there, but existing parcels. Brown Road is improved from. Is that no? Help me out. Is that Sycamore? Is that right? Sycamore Road.
Brown Road is
Brown Road goes south, yep, and then where Hickory hit, it's on Hickory, you got Sycamore. So from Sycamore to the east or to the west, to Clayton is improved. but it's Brown from Sycamore to the east to Ford, that was paid 10 years ago, maybe?
Well, that kind of goes back to this, split proposal that was done right there, where, it proposes a lot split, and it's like, well, there needs to be a subdivision with the street improvements on that 5 acres. Otherwise, we're kind of in that same, we're putting ourselves in the same situation there as we are on board. And with the new interchange here off of Brown, having a straight shot to get up the hill, I can see Brown would need something, especially with the new bypass interchanges and stuff in 412. It'll be a lot easier to access. And once this is taken out straight up, envision seeing more traffic going up and down.
Trying to remember, is there gonna be a roundabout?
Yes, Brown.
Round.
So they're going to have to improve that part of Brown as well.
Well, that's
Because right now it's only like one lane that can really get through there.
the
Yeah,
state
it's
is
very
proposing
tight.
a roundabout there, and it's going to be partially improved. Like to this point, essentially, we're taking some of this out.
Do we have an idea of what they're doing now? Because right now that's 1 acres from there.
Yeah, I went down there and I thought, oh, this would be wide enough for 2 cars.
It's not. Sometimes that mirror is dirty.
I bet.
I don't know if there's an applicant here for this to speak to it, but. Y'all have anything else?
And there's no chance of ever connecting with Wall on their street?
What street are you?
Isn't there a street that goes right behind, Hillcrest?
Bardon, right here?
Yes.
I would say that Island might.
They've not been receptive in the past.
Well, and it's just, if we were going to connect it to Bardine, it should have been done somewhere, previously where these were connecting up through there to be able to get over to it. I don't think, given the topography, that's back here, this was ever going to essentially come down to the roll and, be able to come over to this area.
Because that's really the only relief I see.
Yeah, and there was conversation about that way back before Bill started. And my recollection is that Lowell really wasn't interested.
And we would run into the same issues on Bardine. I mean, it's not actually an improved road.
Yeah.
There's like one small section that's been paved, and then probably half of it is not.
It's still there.
Yes, ma'am.
Alright, so in terms of rezoning, I think everything that what's been the ask is fair. It's just as a city, we need to pull this forward and really need to have some hard-nosed conversations about how we're gonna get there with the street improvements. My opinion.
how is the city going to proactively address
I don't
that?
know, but how,
Yeah,
but
so
how,
if
but,
it can, you know,
but,
so
but it is, it's as this continues to grow and that potential density hits there, it's gonna be improved only, it's gonna be neck down and it's gonna create a burden for the residents. Yes.
I think I would have a hard time approving a rezone to R3 without knowing how we're gonna accommodate that. That would be difficult.
Okay. Move on.
If y'all are into, yeah, if there's,
We're just solving more of this tonight.
I don't think we're gonna solve those issues tonight, by no means, but.
Okay, let's move on to the next thing. Talk about 116 South Rainbow Road. Two parcels, 051 0001 000 for the Weeders. This was previously rezoned, it was A1 and then went to R3.
Now we want R3.5.
Well, what we did talk about with that rezone was that it originally was R4, it was just going R3, and coming back with a variance because we knew that there's karst and topography and other types of issues there. So my understanding that's what's being presented tonight to talk
Absolutely right. You took the words out of my mouth. So all of that, the topography, the Cave Springs recharge area, Rainbow Road improvements, and there's also a pretty hefty lift station that has to get constructed. The sewer is right now in Torrance, so to get it up the hill and for the south side of the creek, really to get under the creek and then up to Torrance. All the financial burdens just to get something to work, we need the density. So we run the numbers. If we did it by the R3 code, you get 75 lots. That's not enough to make this feasible. So exactly what you said. We tried to do R4 to get the 70-foot lots to work. Based off the concept I had in my packet, I assume you'll have. That concept produces about 90 lots, which is 2.25 units per acre. The land use plan, I believe, wants around or no more than 4 units per acre, so we're within that low use rate there. So the path forward is exactly what you said, R3 with the variance to get that concept to work.
So most of the lots, or how many of the lots are at 70-foot variance?
We're requesting the entire property at 70 foot. So get the 70-foot frontage, subsequently the 8,400 square foot lot area would come with that 70-foot lot width request. And that's to get the 90 lot subdivision you're looking at.
We also, we know what's on the opposite side, which is shared against Rogers, it's very equivalent.
Yes, sir, and I didn't mention anything on that. There are 3 there's 2 existing road connections. You can kind of see in the dirt movement here that we have to tie onto. We're also, for the north side of the creek, trying to tie on to 63rd there. It's got a right-of-way access. We'll have to work with Rogers on that final connection. But that'll provide plenty of ingress, egress for the, we're calling this Crescent View Phase 4, if this is successful. So just, it would allow plenty of connectivity over to Mount Hebron, I believe it is, from Rainbow.
It's shown in the back, 3 on the east side, 2 on the west.
Yes. We did phase 3 here to the right of the disturbance. That creek is jurisdictional, so we're trying also, not only with the Cave Springs recharge, but we're trying to minimize our impact to that area to stay away from any core permitting. We'll have to do a little bit with the Rainbow Road widening. So there's a lot with this piece of property.
I had a question as you're on your way out. The existing pond that's there on the southernmost component of the property, that's up there. How are you going to convey that water towards the creek?
It is in our concept to keep that existing pond there, but we'll collect it and likely pipe it. We're anticipating some sort of culvert at that creek crossing, so we'll probably just connect it into that culvert.
But I know she has three houses that are 3 lots, potential lots.
We'll follow the right of way. The Rainbow Road improvements will
You
need
know,
to
there's a
start.
lot of effluent that comes off of that.
That's right.
Just didn't want to create a burden for those 3 parcels that's being
Yes, sir.
suggested here.
I share the same opinion.
Hammerhead?
No.
No, not that.
Oh.
I didn't think you would.
I did, yeah, that's what you're saying there.
Well, that was discussed, I think there was discussion of what that lot was, I think at one point, utility lot, but.
Yeah, you're right.
It doesn't
Sorry.
allow hammerheads to do it.
Yeah, so, sorry, I just pulled it up. That's actually where we're expecting the lift station to sit, is that very west lot. There's gonna be, what is this? I think it's lot 67, if you can read the label. It's got a little triangle piece. Again, that's conceptual. We might change it where it's just all contiguous to that open lot, where the creek comes through.
Oh, we're talking about
So,
just north of that. Where the hammerhead is. For the turn.
The hammerhead. What's the question on that?
Oh, we don't allow hammerheads.
Okay. So we,
Cul-de-sac.
okay, yeah, we can explore one of the other options.
yeah, we don't want the hammerhead.
Cul-de-sac.
The cul-de-sacs are the same width, so we'll just create the cul-de-sac there. We can do
What
that.
is that lot?
Now, where, I'm sorry, go ahead.
What is that lot where the hammerhead is?
So we're trying to create a buffer. We'll need to keep a natural buffer between us and that red, which is the Cave Springs recharge area.
So it's just like green space?
Yep,
Okay.
you got it. Blues are where we're intending to do detention and water quality for our property. And then everything, you see red's the Cave Springs, the buffer area. Hopefully that helps.
So currently, how many lots are there to be established now in current plan versus with the waiver that you're requesting then?
So, from what we can tell, if we keep this exact layout and go to R3, it would be 75 lots. What we're proposing here is showing 90.
Which is 40 acres.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you say 40 acres, you look at 75 lots, that's like 2.1 lots per acre.
I'm pulling from memory. I think phase 2 is also, or phase 3, I'm sorry, just to the right. I think we got 104 on 40. So
here.
the dirt, yeah.
Yeah.
And we had to do the same thing with that's also with the Cave Springs recharge buffer.
So which lot were you gonna do as your lift station lot?
The downstream, I was trying to address your question with we're going to convey the stormwater. So it's the skinny lot directly northwest of that pond area. So from it,
The one right next to the window.
This one right here? Okay. Okay. ladies, what are your thoughts?
Did you say me?
No, ladies.
Oh, okay. Sorry, can't quite hear you.
Sorry.
You know if that was David or
No, David, what are your thoughts? I don't want you to feel left out.
I think with the, limitations that we have with the cars and the recharge area, everything, I mean, when you think about 40 acres with only 9 lots, that's not exactly a very high density in the grand scheme of, lot count, per acre. And I think we know that when this was originally looked at, as far as the layout and how the property is being proposed, I don't think we necessarily have an issue with the original layout whenever it was proposed to be the layout board. So.
How much more engineering work do you have left to do?
Good bit,
Sorry.
a good bit.
So, this is projected, but it could also shift based on
Yeah.
what you find during.
You got it.
But right now, the plan is still to have a connectivity to the to the subdivision to the east, right?
Correct.
Phase 2 and phase 3,
And
right?
that comes out there at the school.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Correct.
across all the way across.
Oh, that'll be rude.
Over Mount Hebrew.
So you-
Through, like right through here, like if this is Rainbow, they're looking at a connection with, you can kind of see the roadbed there. This will come all the way over. And you can get down here right there. So we're not, too far of the job.
Well, at least here, there's several different options to go about.
Right.
One of the original plans we looked at, they showed connectivity across the street, or across the stream corridor there. But there's already this existing connectivity here. So I don't think there's necessarily, from the Cave Spring standpoint, a need for that.
Yeah.
Having 2 north-south connections here, plus, there's only one here. So I don't see any issues with, us not having that connectivity. There's still three connectors going east on this side, and then, one over here and one over here.
Now, across from that is the acreage there, is that likely to be developed as well, or is that a protected?
This right here,
Yeah.
That was
this is protected as part of the Heritage Commission. This, we have heard the rumor that this piece of land, this 18 acres, has actually been taken in by the Heritage Commission also. So
I know, that's what I heard.
I believe it's going to end up being protected. There was people that called and asked questions about numerous times about rezoning it, wanting to develop it, things like that. There was no utilities there, and it was, I want to say, that losing stream corridor came up into a good quarter of the whole northern section of that property. So it had a lot of development issues.
Barriers.
Barriers, yes, the great word, barriers. The cars, there was people that were, I think had asked about, making some minor splits to it, and then again, the karst regulations and, the septic systems and those for subdivisions. Frankly, I hope it was, because it makes things probably look a lot easier as far as the natural area. Anything else?
Shut the cul-de-sac, the hammerhead for a cul-de-sac.
We'll work on that during the preliminary plat. phase of projects.
Design phase.
Yep, you got it.
And I think everything's spot on that was discussed back during the original pursuit of R3.
Very good. Yes, sir. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Alright. We got the zoning code update review.
Would y'all entertain, someone talking to you for just a minute? We had a previous applicant request to just, have a discussion with you real quick tonight.
Wait,
Is that
What?
That's why I didn't tell you before he asked, or while he asked, didn't think it was. It'd be quick. We had a meeting today with all the staff, water, sewer, fire. Our engineer there. Others or something.
So reorganize the commercial building.
So, couple changes since we talked in the PZD. The engineers have been going back and forth on the large scale. Due to the centralized step system, which is in the southwest corner of the property, we lost one of those commercial buildings. We kept the large one on the front. Not ideal for us, but we had to because it has to be at least 100 feet away from a residential structure due to ADA requirements, or ADH.
Say that one more time for me.
So the centralized step system, which all the sewer gravities to it in the southwest corner, has to be at least 100 feet away from that residential structure.
Okay.
So that was
Gilchrist, and they've lost a lot towards the end of that. They see that as a true holding tank, and with the recent reviews, they started enforcing that.
So what we're hopeful for, where we've positioned it in the future, it could be 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whenever it will be. We would like to have gravity sewer on that road anyways, the city would. So it's set up to where we could just replace both of those tanks and pumps with a single gravity line and regain that commercial lot. It could be a while, but that's the intent eventually. The other main changes, obviously when you saw it, there were no utilities in the PZD, but they've since added that. Water line has been shifted to the north to add fire hydrants for fire access, as well as all of the water meters will now be in grass front yards rather than under the concrete on the driveways. Public Works Director really like that, as do we, because if it leaks, you're not cutting concrete to fix a leak.
There's also a lot of weird easement jutouts to get over to those and eliminate all those in the back along those alleyways. So a little cleaner.
The biggest thing that we found out this morning, it was in the graphic of the site plan on the PZD, but the actual verbiage just called out the measurements of the buildings, not the individual units. So I think it was clear, but our proposed use for these was to be individual units that could be sold as 0 lot lines. But in the PZD, it got written down as building dimensions, not unit dimensions, because technically the lots are the units. And am I safe to assume that you guys were thinking that the same way as individual units, 0 lot lines?
Yeah, that was the discussion. It was discussed that these would be each individually sold units that needed to have its own demarcation.
Correct.
So the intent was that, but to your point, we probably need to have that amended to clearly state that.
Mm-hmm. We're okay with that. Dave and I talked today. We know it's got to be done. So what we're hoping is that maybe we could just, we'll talk to see if it's feasible. We're hoping to not have any more delays because the large scale just has to go through you guys. The amendment to the PZD would go through planning and council. And you wouldn't want to approve a large scale development plan that's pending a rezone amendment.
Right.
Basically what we're searching for is the fastest option to let us get out there and start turning dirt. So if we remove the partial lines from the townhomes on this large scale and left everything else the same, and then push the PZD amendment through, as well as the partial lines going back on large scale for 0 lot lines once that's approved, then that would keep us from adding basically an additional month cycle.
I hear you. I know there was some months that was between the PZD approval and now that was on the sideline. Now I know that also in respect that some of these things were trying to get hashed out with the, because we did have a concern that was commented on, like where does the whole intent go? Like where is that? Where is that? Can it really be right where it's presented?
Yep.
And so the concern was valid, and now we see it's been relocated for due cost. So we see some changes there. I don't know, David, I mean, when you look at that and say, can that happen? If it's the buildings, as we talked, the PZD, if it went along with how the building is, the PZD is currently worded.
If I had
If we're
known
gonna-
this was gonna be on the agenda tonight, I'd have dropped my phone.
Yes, this was last minute, and thank you guys for squeezing it in.
Something I just thought of. Sorry, and we didn't talk about this today. We're creating 0 lot lines. We're creating 0 lots. We're doing that. That's a preliminary plat. We haven't done a preliminary plat. So
Large scale.
I think we can keep the large scale set up the way it is. Remove the lot lines off the large scale because that's just a design of everything as a whole.
Right.
Go in and do a preliminary plat with a PZD revision, and then it's still going to all run.
It's got to run the
currently,
same, right?
but realistically, to do this correctly, we need to have a preliminary plat and a final plat.
That's true.
Yeah.
And so, I think the way Nico's proposing it as far as the large scale and potentially removing the lines off of it, just showing this as a large scale development, you know, as a whole, we can do a preliminary plat with the PZD amendment, and then once all that's done, as far as, you know, the residential side will run just like a normal residential subdivision anyways, which it should.
That's
It
what it's
should
going
have.
to do.
Yeah, that's that, thinking about it, now, from that standpoint, and since we're in this spot, it's probably the best way to go about it.
That works for us as well because the commercial corner holds the detention, the sewer, the street improvements, everything necessary to complete the development. And so if the preliminary and final plat just pertain to the townhome development, that wouldn't hold us up any further.
Well, the preliminary plat would create, you know, all the lots of the commercial lot,
Okay.
you know. But to have, you could do it in phases, where you do commercial, you know, maybe a second phase or something like that.
I think the
But like,
commercial,
you know, the pond, you know, is being utilized for everything, so I mean, it's gonna have to be done, you know, like it would be for the normal final plat to be completed.
I think commercial and townhomes would be at the same time, or if anything, the commercial before.
And if the commercial's first, essentially everything's gonna be done
Yeah.
for the residential lots already anyways, and that's what I was thinking. And so I really think it actually moves it along the way it should.
That works for us.
Okay. I can follow that logic.
One more thing to throw out there this morning, we added one more fire hydrant per the request of the fire department. I think Public Works was good with everything else. There's a couple drainage calculations and sewer calculations that we're waiting for the engineers to hash out. But infrastructure wise, I think we're all really close in design.
I think one of the things we talked about today was like sidewalk on 264, making
Yes.
sure, you know, we have that shown. and like how that's gonna be connected, because, there are still showing like fenced-in yards and stuff on the front. So there's potentially some areas there, they're gonna rework some stuff, and potentially putting in access easements over the singular sidewalk that accesses the buildings from Cavern Springs Way. It would probably be the same along 264, where the individual units are accessed through one communal sidewalk, and then they spread out almost more like a porch style basis. But for people to actually have that legal accessibility, they're going to have some sort of easement.
Yeah.
The 10-foot trail, does it go
Well,
down
it
Ford
was
and
because of
Bullet
that.
too?
Yeah, just north and south of Ford.
It's
The
not public.
4-foot sidewalk, however, though, they did bring up today, and I think that'll be added to this east to west along 264. As of now, there's no connectivity, but as David brought up, the other developments along 264 are doing that as well, so eventually there will be connectivity.
That's something to think about on the other side of the road too. Is somehow connecting all these trails together.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Well, yes. So, like this development here should be put in the same trail section. There's actually a pretty good green space between here. So, I mean, at some point in time, it would have to be done via capital improvement project by the city, but, you would have, 80, capital improvement would have to be done there, but you'd have a full 80 connected and potentially, street crossing there at 264. Granted, there's other things we know that has to be done for, something like that to be done safe.
And one other thing to mention too, I think we talked about this today, David, but if the sidewalk on the north property line running east to west is not required, we would obviously love to not do it, just because I don't think it would be a whole lot of use. To the east is just backyards with fences. To the west is church. So if it's required, we can do that, but if it's not needed, and we can just do the inside sidewalk for the townhomes, that would be our preference. So you guys just guide us on that.
Are they talking about widening 264 at some point? I know it's way down the chain,
Yeah,
but
Well,
I feel like a few years ago.
I think with 612 coming in, I think that idea is not going to be pursued.
The last,
Yes, and then if you follow what's happening with Lowell has basically taken over, or is in the process of taking over 264.
Yeah, I heard that too.
So,
Sounds
This
like.
was a long time ago.
the last conversations I've heard, every complaint about traffic, they just say it's going to get resolved when 612 gets done.
which
So I don't think
is
they
it
do.
true?
Yeah.
It is to an extent.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying I agree, but
But what they don't take into account is future growth of each of the cities.
Yeah.
So
Well,
they're only
like
looking.
I use 612, even though but it's the people on, there's so many people on 264 that are gonna continue to use it. So just the amount of people on, they wouldn't go all the way down to 612.
Well, I mean, that's Jason's point is, there's people that are already on it, and that number is only going to grow, just like Ford Lane, like we discussed, two developments there, 77 and 27 acres.
612's not super easy to access between, 49 to 105.
Well, I like it.
Yeah,
love
that's
612.
part of the advantage of it.
And I'm all the way down. I do not go down to 264.
But it
there's
doesn't
so many people
benefit
on
any
it.
of those subdivisions in between, really. They have to go to one or the other to even get to 612. Where you're already on 112 going to the new line.
Yeah, they would have to turn back.
If there was some stud outs, that would have really helped.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't make more access.
But
So, any go back to what you're saying there about this, you were asking, looking for some guidance on.
Yeah, so we didn't have east to west sidewalks, public sidewalks drawn on the north property line, right along 264. David brought it up today that other developments further west, they're requiring that. Obviously, the commercial developments are putting in a sidewalk. And I said, if it's a requirement, we have to. Obviously, it is what it is. If we don't have to for this section, obviously, we prefer that we don't. One, because of cost, and two, it'd just be a double sidewalk that we would have to put a gate through each section of the fence so they can walk from the public sidewalk through the fence to the private sidewalk and then into their townhome.
How will the deliveries, let's pick on a UPS driver. How would a UPS driver make those deliveries to those townhomes that are facing 264?
My guess would be on-street parking on the public street, and then they would access that sidewalk and walk down to those buildings that strip runs across every unit.
Why is that first half of, or the northern part of called Public Street in one patch and the rest going into Cavern Springs Road not?
I don't know, and I don't think there's a difference in either one. They're the same width, they're both public.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that there's not something here that I'm missing of why it's hatched differently. Because that should be a complete public
Correct, it is.
From 264 to Cavern Springs Road.
It is public all the way.
I don't know what y'all have in front of you, but on the plans, it is.
Okay, but it's
What he just gave us.
yeah, this is all I have to go off of.
No, I understand, yeah.
I think it's because in his last conversations with RDOT, they requested, you can see a small note at the top end of that. He says, see RDOT details DR2 street. So the way it flares and connects to 264 is slightly different.
Okay, but back up a minute. I don't understand your concern about why would residents be coming off that public sidewalk and going back into their home now?
I don't think they would.
No, neither.
But we just proposed when we spoke today, connectivity from that public sidewalk to their private sidewalk.
I think if you that's partly why I asked the question of if I was the delivery driver. If I was a delivery driver, how would I access it?
Mm-hmm.
Like how would I get there? Because what we don't want to encourage, the way 264 is now, is parking on 264.
I agree.
So, but one of the things that I think we can all agree is there's lack of connectivity via sidewalks through Cave.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a sidewalk, if their code calls for it, and there's a sidewalk out there, it encourages that, but it doesn't have to connect to the houses, right? It's just for that foot traffic that may go along there.
Yeah.
Now I know we could make about a dozen different arguments that it's the sidewalk to nowhere,
Right now.
because there's not one there anywhere along there.
That's now.
But that's now, but then you have, Howard, Ridgewood Brentwood be addressed. If it gets there's no sidewalks, and there's not a great opportunity for sidewalks through there without some major improvements. And then we're to Lowell. Okay? So
But then again, if you don't do it now.
I know, I'm not condoning, or I'm just trying to play devil's advocate as we look at this, is there's smart places to put it, and then there's places that maybe aren't. But it should, we want that connectivity.
We don't have it in front of the church either.
We don't have it in front of the church, we don't have it, there's nothing, there are zero. So something's got to start it, but then on the flip side, if it's not, then what does that?
If that's the start and the end, what's the point?
What's the point?
There needs to be a sidewalk on one side or the other, and the other side is already developed.
Yeah, certainly would be willing to buy Ridgewood.
We do a standard sidewalk like this, you know, in front of the properties, you know, almost up to the church property. You know, from,
Daycare.
yeah, from the daycare to Pasadena essentially.
Right.
You know, those all have a standard sidewalk in front of them.
So we've set a precedent. I mean, that's what the code says, and should do it.
And that's fine, we're not trying to argue it. In front of the commercial, it completely makes sense. Mainly just the eastern half of the property. I just wanted to bring it up, and if we need to do it, then we'll do it, no problem.
I'd like to see it stay.
So if you clean the lot lines off of it, we address those through the preliminary plat with the BZD amendment.
Yep.
I believe we all agree the intent was always there. That was what was discussed, what was where the vote was, that was what was to happen.
Yep.
So there's some language that needs to be cleaned up. It's been discovered that wasn't written as strongly as it needed to be, clear enough that it's clear that it needed to be specific. So that needs to be resolved. But in terms of starting large scale, to David's point, I think that's the path. We have to quickly go through the revision process to get things back on track to the intent.
And after today's meeting, we're hopeful that by the April Planning Commission meeting, the engineers would have had one more back and forth to get some of their final questions answered. We'll see if that's the case or not. We're hoping to have very minimal outstanding questions or concerns by the time we come see you next month.
Good?
Thank you guys for squeezing us in.
Yeah, thank you. All right, now let's talk about building code update. Hey, Nico, you got another copy of that?
Yeah.
You can have her found, so she's captured. Thank you.
Well, you tell them computers not split screen. We won't start with. You want it? Hello, it's good to see you guys.
Good to see you as well.
Good to be back.
You're like a regular.
That's good. That's right.
hopefully the hopeful update. And I know that the font, we sure brought magnifying glasses. And so just know that like a lot of this is going to be repeated in the PowerPoint, and so we'll see it here. And then if we need to get some bigger copies via David, we can do that. So you guys have just yeah. Ron's packet.
Are y'all ready?
We are ready.
Okay.
Ready.
All right. Well, thanks for having us. Derek Flynn with Garver and Juliet Ritchie also here with Garver. You all recall late last year we adopted an updated future land use plan and master street plan map that involved a lot of public input opportunities. You all examined, we had big paper copies of the map in here, and we looked at all corners of the city, right? And with that, it was an opportunity to update that overall section of the vision plan. And we appreciate all the coordination on that. And that brings us to this slide, which shows those future land use categories that you all adopted. So as we move forward, we are looking at the zoning code to add some regulatory tools to that vision, and so we want to emphasize that this has been tailored specifically to. We remember the conversations that we have. We remember the zoning districts that we love. We remember challenges that we have, in different corners of the city with different zoning districts. So we're trying to move this forward with staff in a way that is really receptive to that and really takes into account the challenges, but then also looks at market pressures and just how things are moving forward in the whole region, right? And specifically here in Cave Springs. So with this zoning code update, a couple of black and white things that we'll be looking at as we move forward is Appendix A. That's an update to your zoning districts chart. That is a draft copy that you have a paper copy of right now. Appendix B, that's your schedule of uses. We're working with staff right now to think about those draft categories and then how does that evolve into a revised schedule of uses. And then the code itself, we're excited to work with staff on a holistic reorganization of that for readability, accessibility, clarity. We know, like with the current pagination, it can be a struggle to cite different sections of that. We are also working to unify it into a unified development code so that it kind of marries your recently updated subdivision code. And so you can have your, the planning commission staff can just much more quickly, you're going to have one table of contents that you can look at and just be able to look at all that stuff together in one document rather than have to download the other PDF and stuff like that.
Nice.
Yeah. So these logical next steps with the zoning code, we just want to touch on a few things just so you kind of understand the framework that we're working with as this moves forward. So we know that y'all have updated incrementally some helpful updates over the last few years. So we're going to hang on to those things that work and that are helpful to the city. Right, and just review those and integrate those into the new code, whether it's parking, outdoor displays. We've talked to staff about storage of things, mobile vendors. With the growth, it brings great new amenities and resources, but also challenges. So we want to work with you on tools that can help kind of address some of those challenges. I've already mentioned the UDC, but that has good accessibility benefits. And then this is really your opportunity to codify the vision that you adopted. So a lot of effort went into that creation, that review, that adoption, right, of that future land use plan. So this is just an effort to align your zoning code to where they talk to each other better and work and just kind of work together in that way. So all the colors, all the new draft acronyms that you can see on there, we just want to, before we get into that handout, just want to reassure you that these are all grounded in the future land use plan, not created out of thin air or anything like that. We do recommend retaining a handful of districts. We know that agricultural district is important. We know that the commission believes that the residential estates is important, and then also both R1 and R2 are proposed to really not have any changes unless staff, we have conversations about like minor tweaks or something like that. And then to kind of move forward with your adopted downtown plan, there's a variety of mixed-use districts to try to help. And instead of just having one mixed-use district, there's more than one, so that you don't feel like you're giving so much away to like rezone to a certain thing. You have more to choose from. You have a bigger palette of colors so that you can actually have a better grasp on what the end product is going to be and what the build out. There's obviously flexibility, but you have a more nuanced approach to that kind of decision making. Let's see. And with that, this is one slide that is going to show just in a snapshot all of the proposed zoning districts that are on that handout, that draft appendix A.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So, yeah, we're going to retain R1 and R2. So, are the RN1 and RN2 to be like the 3 and 4, the R3 and R4? So,
yeah, actually the walkable neighborhood 1 and the WN1 and WN2. If you look down in that third column, it
says former districts that this encompasses.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You know, so you'll see the R3 and R4. Now, it's not gonna be exactly like that, but.
Yeah, because I see them in multiple places.
And then, yeah, like you'll see some that say NA in that line, and what that means is you don't really have anything exactly like that. I mean, there'll be kind of pieces, you know, you have like your R12 and stuff, but there's not really anything exactly matches that. And then we'll see the other commercial districts that are going into mixed use as well. I think it bears saying too that like this goes from kind of least intense to the most more intense type of uses, you know, that way. So that's helpful as well, and it's organized that way on the chart.
So we pulled recreation and open space out as a new category just to split that from agricultural to let agricultural live on as is. But really, when you're thinking about the natural heritage property, the cave, things like that, that may need just the ability to be protected in a different way that you don't really have with agricultural. Also properties that can be recreation spaces in the city. And so there's the idea is that there's much more flexibility. There's not really like going to be rigid bulk and area like lot width or depth, things like that. Because it's more tied to what's the acreage of the actual site that should be zoned at, right? But so it's kind of more flexible in that regard, but there's just proposed to like not allow too many things to happen in those areas also. So without like a conditional use permit or something like that. Anything else that you want to add on this one, Julia?
I don't think so. I think the recreational and open space are right now things that are considered, you know, like some of the RWP properties and, you know, the Natural Heritage Commission, and then things that are clearly parks, you know, public, like the city park and things like that. Probably, I don't know, we haven't had a discussion yet about like POA park spaces and things like that, and what those are done. I don't know if we haven't had that discussion yet. I just thought about that.
Well, we had talked about city services spaces too.
And the recreation and open space.
Remember how we decided, we talked about how it was a verbiage thing?
Like in the use chart?
Yeah, like I remember at one point we had talked about it, and I can't remember how well, even like, you know, city shop space, playing, you know, lift stations and things like that. I think we talked about, you know, with lift stations, we were going to the verbiage in that, you know, some of those utility type of things, you know, would essentially be allowed to be zoned whatever the adjacent properties are zoned.
Yes.
But even like the water tower, you know, space, like, you know, what would it fall under the zoning designation?
We can look at like an institutional category if you want to. We don't
We had talked about that one.
Yeah. So we can.
What do y'all think about something like that from city services? Like, you feel it's something we would need, or also think there's situations where you maybe don't want city services to be overused.
Yeah.
You know, where it's, you know, like somehow, you know, municipality gets a hold of some land in the middle of a residential area and wants to use it as a lay down yard or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we should talk more about that. Honestly, I think we should look and see what spaces we have. So I know we have a map of like all the city owned property. I think we should look at a space, like what those spaces are, and if it's something that we feel like needs its own category. But I feel like the stuff like downtown, like you would want that to be like in the downtown main district, you know what I mean? I don't know that you would want to zone it separately,
Exactly.
you want it to fit in.
There's some that you want to stay and fit the zoning category of the surrounding use.
But I understand what you're saying about like the public works yard. So, okay.
And if, just on the surface of it, just the wording, you know, that could fit under trades and services.
Yeah, that's true. Yep. Good. So, I think let's have a further discussion about that next time we meet. We'll look at those specific properties and maybe make a recommendation on that.
Just big picture, the last thing I would add on this slide is just the single, like where the main colors are at the top of each box. The intent there was just to help you quickly be able to see how many do I have that are single family, residential, detached only. Okay, I have those, so you can like mark those with your pen on there if that's helpful. There's also a gray bar at the top. This is like a quick housing guide that is going to show a bar when the different housing type is allowed, with certain restrictions usually, but like, you know, in that zone district. So additional housing options in that next box, and then the mixed uses over on the purple box over there.
Question. So we're not having lot widths and depths.
We will. Well, probably, actually, I think I would like to get away from depth, personally, just because I feel like it causes more problems than it solves. Yeah. You know, and, but we are gonna have lot widths and things. We wanted to get kind of buy-in on the overall scheme, and then we can like kind of put in those details, you know, like the minimum square footage and densities and things like that.
What they were talking about earlier that you're referring to was kind of specific to the recreation and open space.
Yep. Right, no, I was just looking forward down through the residential stuff.
But you can, if you look down nearly the last row at the bottom, front setbacks. And so one thing that we did want to show y'all at this phase in this milestone was where there's a transition between traditional front setbacks versus like build 2 zones. And those build 2 zones, you know, are useful where you want to have more of the downtown feel, right, or walkability, and also it helps you have less driveways in a dense way, like along the street, right, and it can encourage, and we can have regulations that requires them to be rear loaded via alleys and stuff like that. So
there were some of these that we definitely going to end up having build 2 zones, and I think in our discussions, the intent was some of these were going to specifically be rear load.
We'll highlight that here in just a second.
I think we've talked about this one.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to add on this?
No.
Okay. All right.
And then these are not really changing. You have to get that a little bit about the,
RE.
from A2 into RE.
Okay. We looked with staff at just the similarities between RE and A2, and we came to the quick realization that they actually have the same bulk and area requirements, and y'all probably see that as well. So we're proposing to merge those two together, eliminate A2, let A1 live on, let A2 be eliminated, and incorporate it into RE, but with that, do a careful review of the schedule of uses to make sure that we focus on like protecting the RE, you know, as a primary effort, to not have something too noxious like in the RE. You know.
So does RE continue with the same type of agriculture zoning that it has today?
Yes.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And like, there are some things that were in the A2 that might have been, you know, more even more intense agricultural than like what's in RE today. I think that those things, you know, there might be some pieces that will move to an A1 from an A2. But yes.
I think, so like say someone wants to go for the A2 and they want to have like a hobby farm. They've only got like 2 acres and it like it's kind of like not in a very dense area. Will they be able to do that on A2 or will they need to find like a A1 property?
So you mean R3, RE? So we're taking A2
Yes.
out, we're transitioning A2
So if
into
A2
RE.
is gone and is it like, is residential estate, so is it kind of like we're getting rid of A2?
Yeah.
Are they still gonna be able to, because I know there's some people that like they don't really wanna have like a lot of acreage, or maybe they can't afford a lot of acreage, but they'd like to have like a couple acres to do like a hobby farm, so are we losing that or?
No, or I think
It
that
can
the
be in
hobby
the
farm part, I mean, there's some limited ag that happens in RE currently,
Okay,
right? But
Yeah, I
like the
think so.
A2, like things that are clearly like agricultural, and we went through and looked at the map at like what's.
I mean, you
currently
already
zoned.
can't have like a cow in A2, I don't think, right? You can't have like that type of livestock. I'm just talking about like the
But
little.
RE you can.
You can have a cow in RE.
I'm pretty sure you can.
You can
No,
have
horse.
a horse, yeah.
I think
don't know
horses
about
and
a
cows are
cow.
different though.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought they were interchangeable with an agriculture animal. I had to go back and look.
I think the horses are a little bit different.
Yeah, I think there's some specific verbiage about equestrian.
Yeah.
But we can look at it.
Horses are classier.
And they're certainly more fun to ride.
But that's all I'm kind of asking, because we have this surge of like people wanting to do the hobby farm type
The
thing.
little chickens in the backyard.
Chicken,
Rabbits.
and stuff like that.
Goats.
Yeah, goats, maybe some sheep.
I think the intent of us reworking this was to allow for hobby farm type uses in the RE.
Okay.
And I think, you know, what Julia was saying is there was probably some things that were even too intense realistically for A2,
Yeah.
you know, that really should have been A1 type of uses. Or it allows for it, but our code is not specific enough to say, hey, you only got 2 acres, you can't keep 20 cows on this.
Yeah.
So that there's some other things in there that we probably need to hone in our code a little bit, because like we get asked about beekeeping
Yeah.
from hobby farms saying, well, you know, chickens all the time. How many chickens can you have? So I mean, there's some of those things that maybe not necessarily from the use chart we need to potentially look at, but from some other areas of
Your concern is I just want to make sure
To
for
not
my notes is
lose the ability
to have
for
hobby
people to have
farms
hobby
in the
farms.
RE.
I think people will immediately assume that because they'll think, oh, residential estate, that's not going to be something that would accommodate a hobby farm. But it's in there, so as long as it's, yeah. But I mean,
Might have to put more description of what is.
Well, and that, you know, and also, I mean, we don't have to keep that name too. If you want to change the name, we can. I was trying not to change the names of things that we weren't really changing the nature of, you know, because just basically so people don't have to get scared and upset about something that's not going to happen. But anyway, all right. So
I think at one point we even talked about, when you say name change, we talked about like calling it residential ag or something like that. You know, but I agree with Juliet. There's the nature of the two of them are so similar. There's almost no point in having the two of them, and there's really no point. We didn't feel like changing the name.
and I feel like there was only like a handful of things actually zoned A2 as well. Like,
Most of the stuff that fits that size is unmarked.
yeah, it's because a lot of it's just there. I think there were like number 7 is coming up in my mind, but like 7 properties in the whole city that were zoned A2.
And a lot of them, even though they're zoned that, they don't even meet the minimum acreage of it, you know?
Yeah, we have a lot of that.
So,
We got a lot less than we used to.
Yeah.
True.
I think it will be, fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, we will make sure that the hobby farm part does not go away.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, because I reckon.
Those hobby farms.
That's what my concern is, like, that was one of the beauties of it, is it.
It kind of allowed for a,
Well, and that's one of the cultural things that Kay and Nikki kind of hit on, is trying to keep that, yes, have the ability to.
yeah.
I mean, I don't have an issue with someone having a cow on 2 acres. If they have a child that's wanting to have a show cow, you know, like they have one show cow.
And a lot of folks have exemptions for that. They're like 4-H and
But again, that's something we
But
would
what you
look
get
at.
into, I'd rather be in the code that states it, because then if you have a subdivision that goes in, then that POA could write it out that it's not acceptable. But if the code says it is,
the code prevails unless the POA wants to sue their people.
sorry,
I said, then the code would prevail unless the POA wants to sue the people that live in the neighborhood.
right, so, you know, if we state it, it helps give that leverage to the intent, not to be taken away.
So is it as specific as a beehive being RE, or?
We don't have anything like that built in. I mean, this is a very preliminary.
Because I do know some people that have bees in their subdivisions, so I just didn't know how something so small like that, but yet can be detrimental at the same time.
Yes.
How that all fits.
We'll make sure that that gets addressed. And we'll bring back that more detailed piece, you know, once we're to that point. I think this is good. I mean, this is great feedback right now. Just know what.
We have a draft, like we didn't feel it was ready to bring today, but we have a draft comparison of those two side by side and what are their differences on the use chart. And so we'll get your thoughts on that next time. And then also just, as long as something is not too ag to go into RE, then it seems like this can move forward fine, carrying over those hobby farm things into the integrated one, you know? But if not, then I guess we need to look at it again. So.
Nancy and I were looking at like the sizes, and I guess A2, so you could essentially have a property that's like 4 acres, which I feel like is plenty big to have a show cow or 5 sheep or something like that, but you can't really go A1. So if you wanted to do that, say you wanted to do a lot split, you were going to end up with 4 acres, could you still have that, which I think is plenty big enough, and in the right setting, it would be appropriate, but would residential estate allow for that?
Well, I think the other thing we talked about was dropping the acreage requirement down for ag.
I think we had discussed it. I mean, some places have it at 3. I mean, I think 5 is really where it needs to be.
You think 5 is
I think
where
it
it needs
is.
to
I
stay?
think it's-
Because then if you drop it down, you're gonna get the people that put 20 cows on 2
You
acres.
gotta
Yeah.
look at the animal too, because some people, not all people have good sense.
Yeah. You get the 20 cows.
Well, that's the understatement of the year.
You'll have a feedlot looking situation where it's just bare dirt and a bale of hay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Madison's gonna get a cow next door.
Okay. All right. We'll look at it some more then.
I don't think we're gonna have a lot of these because, in all honesty, I feel like Cave Springs has fairly high, expensive property, and so I don't think that it's a place where people are like, let's go buy 3 acres and put a hobby farm in Cave Springs. But if it just happens, you know, say you've got a bigger parcel and they want to split it down, but they still want to be able to have a few things, then they can still do that.
I mean, the intent of this is still areas where it's going to be septic. You know, they potentially not even be a well. you know, they would potentially have, you know, enough space for a shop or something like that in the garden, you know, things like that. And again, I don't think, I think we're trying to make sure there's nothing in there that would be commercial agricultural. How about that?
For sure.
You know, where someone could run a commercial agriculture. Now, someone having, you know, some chickens and having a roadside stand to sell eggs or to sell cucumbers out of the garden or honey, I don't think any of those are, you know, something that was being looked at being eliminated. I think the biggest collection that we have currently of A2 is Ozark Acres, and almost nobody is actually utilizing Ozark Acres in any sort of agricultural fashion.
Yeah.
And all of the,
Is
you
that
know,
first
again, we
one?
just had to split, it's 4 acres on that one house that was requested, and there's not a lick of agricultural use on that 4 acres.
Yeah.
You know, so I agree with you. Like, I don't think the majority of people are going to, but
There were reasons.
Also, it's always going to be something.
I like it.
y'all any other questions on this part or?
You can move on.
So here's a slide showing your existing R1 and R2. So we intend to carry those forward. Your R1 is, David has discussed with us, we want to kind of reiterate in the code that we also consider the absence of sewer and other utilities may be a factor in future rezonings of the R1, you know, but it would allow more development similar to, I mean, you have it all over, but we highlighted, I think, in the future land use document, Avery Lane and Avery Estates. So we referenced that.
Yes, they're close to, it's like 0.8 acre, 0.9 acres.
No, I think it's a minimum.
Bridgewood, possibly.
I think it's 1 acre.
It's in that realm. I think there's something else going on.
Any other thoughts or comments on the R1? So with R2, we are recommending just that is currently at 0.6 acres. So we're recommending bringing that down to just a clean ½ acre, 0.5. I think it's just easier math for people, and it's in the whole scheme of things, it's not really that 1/10 of an acre is doesn't add too many cows or anything like that. I don't think. That's really the only thing I think we're thinking about on R2. So just want to mention that.
I can't remember if we actually discussed whether or not to keep it, but I think it's not something we have that many things zoned, but it's probably one where we have a lot of things that could be zoned that or not.
Yeah.
So I think it's beneficial to have either way. Just, you know, have a ½ acre spot before you get down to the north and south.
Yeah.
Where do we see where the acre size is at?
We're still working on acres on the new ones. So we wrote this.
Yes.
So we don't have them all.
We just kind of have the overall kind of intent and those details that are on that left
So the
column
ones
over
that are
there.
the same that we have today, those just transfer over to the same, and it's just the new verbiage that's you're adding in?
The ones that would transfer over are these 4 A1, RE, R1, R2,
With some minor changes.
with some minor changes that we've been discussing, and then
So the lot size or the home size, is that remain the same as what it is today, or is there anything that's changing?
I think the lot sizes on those 4 I mentioned are all the same except for R2, just changing down to a ½ acre.
It's currently called a 0.6.
Yeah.
And if we just, let's make it 0.5 ½ acre, make it clean and easier for everyone to keep up with, you know, as opposed to 0.6. So that's the only one of those as far as the lot size that we discussed.
And I don't know that you know that, see the difference between.
Exactly, and it kind of, you just feel like it creates a burden for people to have to try and figure out an extra, tenth of an acre, if they're going to do a split or a subdivision or something like that.
So where does R3 and R4 get rolled into?
I'm glad you asked.
Excellent.
Excellent. Walkable neighborhoods.
Well, that's what I was I moved in, and I was reading ahead, trying to study ahead. And I just,
All right. So since those seem to be, something that causes a lot of discussion.
Yeah. Tonight we had our R3 so.
Well, what we talked about was that when you get into the R3 and R4, we went ahead and divided them into two. Now, they're not going to be, I think we're still looking at trying to finalize exactly what those minimum lot sizes are going to be and what the, lot widths are going to be, to bring to y'all. And part of that is because we're trying to look at what's been approved, right? And what was contentious. And you'll see, we even have examples as we get a little further into this of the ones that were, easy B's that y'all done, right? So, you got it to a place where you're okay with it. So let's try to make that, something you can replicate. So on these, I think if you move towards density that is, more than your R1 and R2, I do think you start to feel things more that have to do with, the amount of driveways, how on-street parking works. Can people walk around in their neighborhood and get
Even
places?
with sidewalks.
Yes, exactly. And so I think,
Green space.
yes, green space, green space is a big deal, I think, and there's nothing right now that mandates it, but I do think when you have density and you're getting into smaller lot sizes, and that's something that probably should be mandatory at some point. So that's kind of where we're all right, let's at least, start addressing or mitigating some of these issues that come up over and over, as you get into the R3s and R4s. So the walkable neighborhood one, so it still allows front-loaded lots, so your driveway's coming out front. But it's going to have requirement, again, we don't have the details worked out yet on what that's going to be, but some sort of community parkland or open space has to be incorporated into that, right? And so we're going to be doing that. We're going to have the zero lot line. I heard y'all talk about zero lot line houses. Yeah, you can have an option to do those in this, the walkable neighborhood one. And I think we're looking at things that incorporate what Brentwood and Allen's Mill have had, which are, Allen's Mill was R3 or R4 with some variances for lot width, Yeah. Yeah, because then we
Allen's
created.
Mill is why we have R4 now.
Yes, right. We were trying to kind of find a way to replicate that. And then WN2, the walkable neighborhood 2, that takes it and takes pretty much like the R4 that you have, and then requires the parkland dedication, for that development, and then it moves the driveways to the back until where you have, you're going to be required to have that alley section. And I think that changes a lot of things, and it makes the neighborhood much nicer, at that density than it is if you have a bunch of front-load lots. It also starts to address, some of the issues that you run into with on-street parking, right? If you have all these driveways, and the more dense and smaller your lots are, there's just less place to park, And so the walkable neighborhood one, so this is actually from Brentwood, just kind of showing it would probably encompass that. And then this walkable neighborhood 2, this is the development in Fayetteville. And, you'll see.
It's in the future land use document.
Yeah, it is also in the future land use document, as an example, but you'll see like they have some common green space dedicated over there, trees and walking area, and you have all the driveways, are moved to the back. I will say that we did make some exceptions, because there's always a few, like we were writing it, we talked about this, right, I think, David?
Yes.
You have a few that just don't quite fit, so you may have, a certain smaller percentage, and I can't remember what we put that percentage number at exactly when we were going through it, but you may end up with a few front-loaded just because, the way that the property is laid out. And I think that's fine, but the overall effect is very different. And if all of those, were front-loaded lots. And so I'm hoping that mitigates some of the issues that you're feeling with the R4. Because I don't know, I think whenever I talk to cities, not just y'all, I had this conversation in Highfield, both there that I did a couple of weeks ago. I hear it all over the place, Prairie Grove, people are saying they don't want density, and because the density that they have right now just looks like a standard subdivision, except everything's crammed together, and that's what they don't want, and so I think if you can change the way it functions just a little bit, and you can still have, those small lots where people don't want to maintain a large lot, and also to have, kind of an accessible range of housing in the city, and you can achieve that and not create situations that, there are places that people don't want to live, and these are places, we want to create places people do want to live.
In addition to what you're saying, though, things that people have shared with me from Big Springs about density, that a lot of their issues, they kind of agree about it's been 50-50 that I've actually heard from, that about the green space and them maintaining it and things like that. But their biggest complaints that I hear consistently is they're too close, there's not enough parking, everybody's parking in the street, blocking the driveway, and dogs. The noise of dogs barking and waking their children up, and because their homes are so close together. So that's the only thing that I've kind of gotten some negative feedback about.
Yeah.
And I don't live in any of those areas, it's just things that
You said the dogs barking, the parking in the street, and what was the other one?
because basically they don't have enough room.
Yes.
They have guests and things like that over, or a book club, or they're parking along the streets, they're blocking mailboxes, they are, it's a problem with people backing out of their driveway. Those are the type of things.
Yeah. Right. And so some of those conflicts are eliminated because you put the vehicles that belong with the house, in the back, and then you really only have.
So they have a party.
Well, yeah, but you're not backing out, trying to see around them, and backing over sidewalks.
I like the rear alley concept, and I think it makes the whole neighborhood look nicer as you're driving through.
Yes.
Because my concern, and when we use the word density, that I think the mayor doesn't want us to use, but it has to do with the infrastructure being able to accommodate it.
Yeah.
That's my concern.
Well,
Can I say something to that? Real briefly.
well, I'm not gonna say no to you.
Okay. When it comes to the infrastructure, the way that it gets improved when you're dealing with like Ford Lane and 264 and trying to get out there and traffic lights and those sort of things, RDOT will not move until the need is already there.
We know,
So
It's like Ford though, that the challenge is what we just talked tonight is if
the choke points.
Yeah, we're gonna have all the choke points, so we have to address it because that doesn't get fixed if we let things naturally occur. The same problem with Brown. Brown, between that corner of Ford and to where Hickory, or Sycamore Lane is, or Sycamore is not developed. There's no right of way there. but there's not anything that's going to change that trigger-wise, or it's going to be so far down the road that we end up, one of the biggest downfalls, in my opinion, in Northwest Arkansas is the growth is so massive that we're too reactionary. It's every city's dealing with reactionary type of solutions, and it creates problems. And when we as a city say, and I agree, we're not going to do eminent domain, but then we end up with the same problem that we have right now is nothing's going to it's all reactionary correction. And so that's the balance. How do we balance that? It's not an easy answer. It's not it's a hard task, but we're in a pinch.
Well, I'm going to say one more thing, and then I'm done, since I'm not wanting to dominate or change the subject. But the part where you were talking today about the sidewalk to nowhere, until we start doing the sidewalks to nowhere, we'll never have sidewalks.
100%. 100% agree with you.
Yeah, but the example of what happens at that point when there's gaps, the city can fill the gaps much less expensively than we can create the whole thing later. What we're outside the papers today for Wallace Road and Sands Road sidewalks that will tie Hyde Park in Marbella to the sidewalks into Rogers and on around to the Mount Hebron Park. And that will start in a few weeks, but we luckily got a grant for 80% of that, and we're still going to be out $80,000. And so those are the things that we can come back with grants and things and help fill the gaps if the gaps is all we have to fill. So that's the reason that, that some of this stuff.
I don't disagree with you at all.
But the situation on Ford Lane is that's not a gap.
I understand.
Is there any other questions on the WN1 or WN2?
No, there's a lot to digest. I mean, yeah, I get the concept. I understand what's being presented. I don't disagree. I'm not sure that I fully agree.
I think I need time just to.
That's right. Yeah. But I get the path. I see what your vision is, and I don't personally disagree with it. And I like that. Yes, you're taking into consideration all the different things that we have approved, or the hardships, or the challenges and we're trying to. And we all, or I think we all agree. I guess I'm speaking by
We'll
myself.
let you know if it's not.
That's what we want to get rid of is the PZDs. We want things that have buckets that they all cleanly fit into. And we know we don't have the diversity with our current zoning code. So this is the direction we need to move. So I think it's all in the right path, in my opinion.
And I would just throw in to add to that, one of the issues that I've looked and have not been able to see a way that there will ever be what someone might consider affordable housing in Cave Springs. And this kind of concept could help that.
It could. And I think it definitely not going to get anywhere, if we don't have some sort of alternative, something besides R2 that people have some sort of comfort level with, I think.
Right.
And I will say this, I do think, David touched on it, so when you are talking about the road improvements, and I understand 100% what you're saying, is that the road infrastructure, but so while we were waiting, I started researching, Ford Lane, and really the gaps are where you don't have any right of way, per se, that I can find, or there really aren't that many. You got the 25 feet from center line that was dedicated with Brentwood, right? I assume that you're getting some with this development that.
Hillcrest.
Well, no, I saw that one.
Across the street.
Oh, that was the one that Hash properties are.
Yes.
Right, so you're getting that piece, because that didn't come with Brentwood. And then you have some, because you're getting it in lot splits, which is really good, actually, you know, and so you've got actually a fair amount down for.
I think it was more about the entrance and exits, a lot of it.
The what?
The amount of people and the amount of entrance and exit that you have on that road.
Yeah.
With that amount of people.
Well, but you also, like in the code that we did for the subdivision code, you know, you have pretty clear guidance on, you know, being able to ask for traffic studies. And those traffic studies, I mean, they have to take into account not just the traffic that they're adding, but what happens when it's added to the existing traffic, right? And, you know, and they have to make recommendations on what is, you know, going to be a safe situation, and you can require them to give you level of service at intersections, right? And if you're not familiar with level of service, it's A, B, C, D, F, I think. And it just has to do with what is your wait time, right, to get, you know.
And is level of service what the developer would pay for?
So what I'm just telling you that you can now require them to do a traffic study.
The developer would pay for that.
Yeah, and it's going to tell you stuff, and then you have the ability to ask for off-site improvements. And
With 264, we're just kind of up to the state.
the improvements are, I mean, the improvements, yes, but you can go ahead and get right of way. You know, I mean, Centerton right now, like we work with them on stuff, and like the amount of right of way that RDOT was requiring for 102 didn't take into consideration, you know, they want to do sidewalks and trail on there. And so I was like, well, you just ask for 15 feet more, and then it goes to you, City of Centerton, you know, and then you can get your trails and sidewalks put in, and that's what they've done, and that's what they're doing. So you can ask for above and beyond. And it keeps going. But the other thing too is like, I know you're talking about, so even if you don't have a lot, right, if you come up to the intersection, and so if you have these levels of service that you're talking about, you come up to the intersection, and a lot of times you can alleviate those with like having like a dedicated right-hand turn lane, you know, that kind of stuff. And the same thing's coming in to the development, right? And you could have that on board. And you can ask for them to substantiate those types of things in their traffic study. And if it says that they need them, then they're going to have to figure out how to provide them. Not all of that is on the city. You know, part of that's on them. And if they have to go acquire right of way from somebody who doesn't have it, you know, then that's what they have to do sometimes. You know, it's not always a city issue. Now, I do think, you know, most of these things they become public-private partnerships in some manner, right? And you're supposed to do it specifically where you attribute the amount of impact, like kind of the percentage of impact that they're having versus, you know, what's already there. So if they're creating, you know, the whole traffic is 100% and they're creating 40% of it, you know what I'm saying, then you have some things that are attributable. But a lot of times when you have like those turning lanes in, like say it did substantiate having a turning bay on Ford, right? Or internal to their subdivision, you know, that's usually like localized impact that they're creating. And that's on them to figure that out. And if the people across the street haven't given right of way yet, well then they need to figure that out, you know? And I don't know, and so I think there are ways to do it. They're not always super clean ways to do it, but and there's other tools that you could look at that you know, that you're not using now, like impact fees and looking at very specific areas and doing fee in lieu of improvements in certain areas, like building towards, you know, putting in a stoplight or something in the future. So there are kind of localized things you can do, but you really have some tools in your subdivision code now I think you could be leveraging. And, you know, just because you don't have the exact amount of right of way doesn't mean that there's a lot of times you can work things in, especially if it's not for a huge stretch, right? You know, you don't even usually, sometimes you have to, but usually it's not even narrowing the road. What you're usually giving up is like the space where your drainage pipe or something would go, and that has to move like under the road for a portion. You know what I'm saying? Because you don't have the extra. And then, you know, and maybe your sidewalk usually has 4 foot of green space between you and the road, and in that section, you know, your sidewalk has no space or 6 inches or whatever. But a lot of times you can really work within that right of way. It's not ideal, you know, but I don't think that like having those gaps should preclude you from having the developer find solutions and working with them to do it. So if that makes you feel any better about it, I don't know.
Well, certainly we need to be utilizing those tools in our toolbox.
Yeah. We have, well, like we did with Sutherland with the right turn lane.
Yeah. Until we passed that, I mean, like, there was very vague direction given on traffic studies before, and it is a little more organized now than it was. But the realities are that you can leverage a lot of things if people are adding impact. Okay. So the residential neighborhood 1, so this is moving up. Like, so now we're out of the realm of R4, right? So this is like, this is
We're moving out of exclusively detached single family.
yes, you're right. So this is used from into detached single family and 0 lot line, and now we're adding townhomes as well. And the townhomes will add in smaller blocks. You know, like this one may only be like 3 or 4 attached homes. You know, you can't have 20. But again, you have parklands dedicated and then driveways that access from your alley. So this is what Derek was saying, that this one would allow basically Trillium. And I think Derek put together this district based on like the PVD and plats that staff gave them.
Specifically looking at that pocket park part there, because I know we've got another example. If you have the printout and you flip to the back, there's Gully Grove, which is from Fayetteville. That's another, you could say that that's a type of pocket park because it has that central green going like that, right? But back at the RN1, just recognizing how that is providing a different housing type. It's surrounded by bigger lots around it, but it fits into that overall fabric of that neighborhood. And I know in their submittal they had this is not the specific development, but they did include this in their submittal that we got from staff, that CEI packet that had this example from Aurora, the Harmony subdivision in Bentonville. So just kind of some inspiration on how that could play out.
So this is products where you're not having street frontage anymore. Now you're having, open space frontage, which I think that's a great thing to have, like a great option to have in your toolkit, and not have to do a PCD.
I'm hoping we actually have some learnings once Trillium is developed.
Yeah.
That we learn some things from that, what works, what did. So I'm always kind of hesitant until we kind of learn that to expand rapidly. Until we know the impact.
I don't think a lot of people are going to live in that subdivision, but there's definitely some that will want that. So I think there's, it's a good option for.
I think there's a
It's
lot more
a
than you
good
think.
way to see
Yeah.
how this develops,
But I think like these are something that fit good, like Trillium utilized them in like the way it was utilized in the picture you saw from Table. Like sometimes you don't even know they're there, and you might be thinking you're driving around a normal subdivision, you like stumble into this, and it's almost like you stumble into like Neverland. It's like, what is this? This is cool. This is neat. Like, and it's almost like, and then you stop and you notice it and you appreciate it, and you appreciate
appreciate the park space, like the homes, and it's like, never even knew this was here. And it makes you think a little bit different about it as far as the space. And, you know, it's like, I can see where people like come here and they feel comfortable. You know, it gives them, you know, it's a calm area.
It's a
that you know,
homey
just to see.
feeling, yeah.
That's the hope, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right
and
on Township Avenue.
I think that feeling of comfort that David mentions, I have felt that too walking through a couple of these different ones. Like I walked through the Scully Grove one in Fayetteville. Specifically like this, okay, I do have a mouse. This is a public park over here, and then anybody can like walk through here, and it's probably just an access easement, probably privately held, but you know, there's not. I can't remember if there's signs that say this or that, but it connects. You know, like here's a crosswalk, right? This is a public street. This is an alley. This is an alley, but it's in the public right of way, I should say. This is an old street from an older subdivision over here to the east, and then this is all. And this is what Juliet was saying about how some of these along the perimeter are front load garages. It's just because of a space constraint they had with like they didn't have the room in the situation, I guess, to or they, you know, to put another alley back in there. But when you're walking it, it's fine. It all kind of like melds together. But that feeling of comfort it's a reminder to me that this is not. It's these smaller lots and the driveways in the back and the alleys. It's not a foreign new thing. I mean, it's like that was the form 100 years ago, you know. So it's kind of like looking back at our roots and pulling forward with us, like what can still make sense like today, right?
Oh, I like
You know?
Yeah, I do too.
So then we have okay, let me go back to this one. So RN2, this is where you first get two family. Now you can have single family detached, townhomes, probably like a little bit longer block where you can have 5 townhomes detached instead of 3 or whatever. And then you get two family. And I will say, so starting at two family developments, like anything that's multifamily, and you can now impose, you know, then you're able to impose some design standards on how the houses are configured and things. And to me, again, like multifamily is the same thing. It has a lot of the same issues. I think like duplexes and triplexes have a lot of the same issues that we're talking about with just like dense development. Because like instead of one driveway, you have 2. You know, like in a small space. You know, you have double the trash can. You have all these things. And so, anything duplex and above, you can impose design standards to handle that stuff. You know, make sure that parking's in the back, and things like that. But I think we built some of that multifamily stuff into your code. I think
We built some of it into the development code.
yeah.
So I've never thought about it like this. Are you saying that if it's called single family attached, we can't regulate the
design standards.
On townhomes you can't. Because it's
Because it's single.
still, even though they're attached?
Well, okay, it depends on how they're used. I mean, like, the townhomes that y'all have here, like, those are all rentals, right?
Not all of them. Some of them are 0 lot line, like they're proposing to do over here. I'm a little.
Okay, so some of them are.
Well, they may all be rentals now, but they have the ability to sell any of them at any point in time, or some of them at any point in time.
Yeah. So if you do them on individual lots like that, then no, you can't regulate them because they are literally single family homes that are just attached. But if you have actual multi-family, and you're not owning the property underneath it anymore, then it changes.
I never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, to me, the form of the building is still a multi-family building. But I never thought about us not being able to regulate
Less incentive fees.
single family attached. Well, and I agree. I agree.
Yeah. I had to get away from
We can look at the state law. I feel like I've been down this road before, and that's where we ended
Well, it
up.
makes sense the way you explain it, because if I own a lot too, you know.
Yeah.
Could be something.
But yeah, it's a weird area. Like you would think I could apply design standards to these because they're attached, you know, and I've thought about that too. And I wondered if when that state law was being drafted, if that was really their intent or not, you know, and if that could ever be re-looked at in the future. I don't know.
Subdivision, single family, detached homes. Okay.
So mixed use neighborhood, so this gets into integrating kind of these small scale mixed use areas that, you know, function more like neighborhoods. If you're familiar at all with Fayetteville and the Rolling Hills area, this is new development going in, and you have a lot of homes. These are actually townhomes, a lot of them, and they are, some of them are attached and some of them aren't. But multiple ones along.
I think they are attached at least via like a roof line or a breezeway. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but then you have, you know, built into the development, wherever you have like a coffee shop, right? It's now like this corner coffee shop that serves this development. So this is starting to build in those, like what you would call now, like your C3 type uses and building it into the neighborhoods.
Would an example of that be that development that's right behind the neighborhood market up by, because I can't figure out what it is, it kind of looks like that.
Which
It's
neighborhood?
not a typical.
It's not really there yet, they're just starting to build it.
Well, some of them are already built.
They built a few, they're like attached townhouses.
With breezeways.
Oh, I don't know if they
Where is this? Just right behind the neighborhood market, outside of. Right.
Oh, the uptown, across from the
In
uptown.
Rogers?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Rogers.
We can look
But
at
it's
that.
a
It
listed
was supposed to
development,
be
I'm wondering
something,
if you
and then
guys
they
are trying to
changed it. So it's very confusing
Yeah,
because
they had a sign, they were gonna have a hotel.
they were gonna have
they were gonna have
commercial,
porch
and then
stuff.
now I don't know what they're doing, so.
They built that one two-story building.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it looks like it's somehow, but maybe not.
There's definitely some townhomes there, but maybe one of them looks like, almost like a communal.
Yeah, I don't know. It looks nice.
Yeah, I think the thought here is it's to offer something that can be mixed use outside of your core downtown. You know, it's not everywhere, but there might be an intersection somewhere in Northern
Like
Cave.
by Shadow Valley.
You know,
that
that-
roundabout there, I feel like
Um,
somebody could put
yes.
something there.
Yeah,
And it's like in the middle of all those.
Right.
and there's already infrastructure there. Cars are already there. It's not like introducing really a new. You know, it's kind of like being built into a place where there's already activity. You know.
Or like down here, or like Brown Road is, like you already got lots up there, but it's right on. What you're surrounded by, yeah, like that would be
Yes.
sort of what's up.
So, okay. So then downtown neighborhood, so this is kind of the area like that would support downtown, right? So we want to have residential and non-residential, more urban form, and that sort of thing. So this is an example of, to me, what is like a downtown supporting neighborhood. Now, so this is in Fayetteville. It's like the Fayetteville Public Library over here. And like this apartment building that's gone in, it's actually, it has offices on the bottom and then apartments on the top. 3 stories. 3 stories is the max that we're looking at. I think almost everywhere. Maybe we have an option along the highways to maybe go to 4, but you have to step back. But, you know, we like this picture because you have like existing houses, right? Single family homes, older single family homes. You can kind of see like how they work within there. And then you can't see it too well here, but these are duplexes that have been built. You know, you have 3 duplexes on the street as well. So it really is kind of a mishmash of different things, but it is, you know, a density, you're starting to get to a density that supports your downtown that you want, right, that you're investing in, that you want to have these restaurants and things. So you need people to walk to them, but to me it's not so overwhelming that, you know, that you're killing existing houses. You know, you're keeping it at a scale that works.
Another thing I like about this, and y'all can do Google Street View here to kind of look at this in more detail after this meeting, but the three roofs in this bottom of this aerial image, those duplexes she was talking about, I like how it's just, there's so many examples here, like their rear load, you know? So if you're walking by or driving by, they really do just look like, it just looks like homes, basically, you know, and you're not seeing the trash bins, the vehicles parked side by side, 4 vehicles in the front, you know what I mean? It's just, it's got the parking in the rear. So.
Yeah, it is on street parking. They have striped parking spaces on the left side as well.
Parallel parking.
Yeah, it's parallel parking.
Okay, and then downtown Maine, so that would be, you know, where we are now, like your true Main Street, and then these are pictures from North Carolina, I think that there before, you know, again, not saying anything about the stories, but, you know, having things that are pulled all the way to the sidewalk, right, having the wide sidewalks, having on-street parking, and that sort of thing. And I think, you know, this district will, the parking and things will be prescribed really specifically, I feel like in all these districts, but this district, especially because of this, going to be just kind of a four-part town. So then you get to mixed-use commercial, so this is like what would take the place of your current C2. Okay, so you would allow, you know, larger things, like somebody wants to put in a neighborhood market, or a Harps or something like that, right? The examples that we had, this one's from Johnson, and we write their zoning code. I'm trying to think when we passed that. I think it was during the pandemic, so 6 years ago. So like we're starting to have some development that's indicative of that, right? You have commercial development pulled to the street. You have your parking on the sides and the rear, and then this main urgent cares in Fayetteville. But same thing, right? You're on a busy corridor, but you're starting to pull this to the street, so it looks a little better as a more walkable environment, but you can still put larger buildings, you know, along those highway corridors. And I'm not saying they'll be exactly like this. This is just an example of that. And then finally, of trades and services. This is kind of takes the place of light industrial. To look at, you know, basically what it is, like different trades and services, and the design standards that work for that, you know, they're going to be more relaxed than your regular commercial districts. And then we wanted to go ahead and make an extraction district, so that's going to be for, you know, red dirt mining, gravel, rock quarries, all that. And thought about that specifically because we have a big area that's been mined.
Just west of town.
Well, there's that one, but they have the one in the middle of town too. You know, it's been going on for years. And extraction uses to me have a lot of impact. And so I think just having their own category makes a lot of sense. And then also people don't get surprised. You know, well, we were hoping for industrial development, but instead we got, you know, a dirt that's going to be here for 25 years. And so anyway, so I think that was the idea there. So that's our summary. Sorry, it took a little bit, but just want to get feedback, and we've gotten some great feedback.
What would like the church, well, not church, what would be like where you see kind of like my use over here, and then you see it in like the other downtown areas where you have commercial on the ground floor and then the residential above. What would that fit into mixed use neighborhood or downtown mixed use?
Both. You can have it, we're gonna make it where you can have it both. I think the
Downtown neighborhood is going to be, it's going to lean more towards encouraging residential, like she was saying on this slide, to like support the businesses downtown. But the MUN can support what you said, and then also the downtown main, and then also the downtown mixed use. Do we have that one there? Yeah, that one right there. So the idea is that, like, even if someone is out of the core where we are right now, but they want to do something like that, they have a vision, then then they could do that in that area too. You know.
It's a lot of stuff here. I like it.
I like the colors.
It's
very aesthetic.
It's the least we can do to try to like have some sort of organization and all that. It's a lot of content to look at.
That was what we worked on our last meeting.
Just like I told you.
You sell it through visual appeal.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Keeping that pretty colors.
You didn't want any more of those like navy blues and, like.
Bright red.
Yeah.
But it
Well,
should
like,
come with a
almost
background.
blacks and couldn't really work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you all for all the helpful feedback. It's a good, helpful milestone. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and if you have other feedback, like, I would say route it through David.
Mm-hmm.
And then he'll give it to us and we'll talk at our next time that we meet with him and Madison.
Okay. Thanks so much for the presentation.
Good to see y'all too.
I would say we shouldn't do this at the end so that more people can see it, but David can keep putting you guys at the end of the agenda.
However you want to do it.
Yeah, we want everyone else to sit through this.
We should make that.
We actually be good for them to hear.
Probably would.
Yeah.
Less questions.